Welcome back, everyone. This is Jason Franks with Games for Gaijin. We're here for episode 4. I know I promised we were going to take a look at Okushin Party, but I haven't quite finished translating the rules yet. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that we're on episode 4 and take a look at Four Suspects. So this is a game that came out in 2016. It's actually by a Norwegian designer named Christian Otsby, but the art is by a Japanese board game artist. The publisher is 10 Days Games, which is actually a Japanese board game publisher, board game store, and online shop. So they do a little bit of everything, as well as they're one of the principal publishers responsible for bringing Western and European games to Japan and publishing them in Japanese. But this is a game they approached the Norwegian designer Christian Otsby to make a Japanese original version. It's sort of an upgrade of a previous game he had designed, I believe called Perfect Alibi, but this one has some tweaks and changes to the mechanics that definitely make it a distinctly different game. It plays 2 to 5 players. It takes about 15 minutes to learn and 30 to 45 minutes to play, though your first time through, at least in my experience, it's probably going to be a little closer to an hour just due to a bit of analysis paralysis and people really wanting to make sure that they solve the murder mystery correctly. Initially, what attracted me to this game is the incredibly magnetic board game cover, I guess you would say. The cover for this game is just so rich with theme and mystery as to how this game's actually going to play, with the dead woman floating in the onsen, or the Japanese hot spring. So that was what originally made me want to pick this game up. But after reading about the mechanics, it got me even more interested to try it out. Fortunately, the English rules are already up on Board Game Geek. They are not, however, included in the Japanese version of the game. So you do need to download that PDF off Board Game Geek. It runs about $25, and as you can see with most Japanese games, very compact and easy to carry around for a board game day wherever you might be. With that, let's open up Four Suspects, and I'll give you a sneak peek at how to play. As with many Japanese board games, the principal components inside Four Suspects are all card-based. We have 22 interrogation cards, 16 alibi cards, and then 6 helper cards. The premise behind this game is that before the game starts, you're going to remove one of the 16 alibi cards and put it back in the box. That is the person, location, and time of the murder in Four Suspects. The goal of the game is to, by asking questions of your opponents, identify the suspect, the time, and the location of the card placed in the box at the beginning of the game to correctly identify the murderer. In order to do that, you have this nifty notepad, so you're going to deal out a sheet to everybody playing so that they can cross off the combinations that they think are incorrect, as well as take notes throughout the game. For the 15 alibi cards that are left over, when you remove one and put it in the box, you're going to deal those out to every player. Each player is then going to have a starting hand of alibis. So right off the bat, you can cross off some combinations on your note sheet as ones you know are not the correct answer for this game. From there, it's a simple question and answer interrogation game. Each turn, you're going to have 2 options for interrogation cards that you can utilize to ask questions of somebody else at the table. The cards come in combinations of time, suspect, and place, and 1, 2, or 3. Meaning that if my 2 options were the time 1 and suspect 2, I could choose to ask somebody at the table, do you have any alibis in your hand that occur at 9 o'clock? Or I could choose to ask, do you have any alibis in your hand that contain either the redheaded woman or the Japanese Elvis? So the number dictates how many of the options you can ask in your question, and then the top half of the card determines what you can ask about: time, suspect, or murder location. You get to choose who you ask that question. So one of the other players at the table you are going to interrogate based on one of the 2 interrogation cards available to you on your turn. The player then has to respond in 2 ways. First, they have to say how many cards in their hand affirmatively answer your question. So in the first example, how many alibis in your hand contain 9 o'clock as the time? The person would then have to look at their hand of alibis and determine, how many cards do I have that occur at 9 o'clock? If the answer is 0 or 1, that ends the interrogation. But if the answer is 2 or more, the player being interrogated chooses 1 card from their hand that matches the question that was just asked and shows it to the player who is the current interrogator. So if I were to ask, how many alibis in your hand occurred at 9 o'clock? And the answer was 2, the person I was interrogating would have to show me one of those 2 cards. So obviously, the cards that let you ask about up to 3 of an option give you a better chance of seeing an alibi card from one of your opponent's hands. However, that also enables the person you're interrogating to keep showing you the same card. Whereas the cards with only 1 on them let you target your questions much more effectively, but you may not get to see an alibi from your opponent's hands. So it's really a balance of what you're going for with each particular question. The way this interrogation game balances not having all the players gang up on just one person with their questions is that every time you interrogate someone, you then hand them that interrogation card, they turn it face over, and they get 1 coin. Coins can be spent on 6 different helper cards. There are 3 interrogator helper cards in green, and then 3 helper cards if you're the one being interrogated. The 3 interrogator helper cards are the news reporter, who lets you ignore the 2 interrogation cards out on the table on your turn and ask any question you want instead, obeying the rules of the interrogation deck. So you still have to choose a time, a suspect, or a place, and then ask about between 1 and 3 of those things. Then we have the hotel maid. The hotel maid makes it so that the person that you are interrogating has to give their response in secret only to you. So that can either be showing fingers underneath the table or writing down the answer and passing it. The hotel manager, who costs 3 coins, lets you take an additional turn. The 3 helper cards for when you're being interrogated, you have the Novelist, who lets you add or subtract 1 to the true answer. So this could be useful if your true answer is 2, but you don't want to show the person interrogating you a card. You can subtract 1 and make it 1. Or even crueler, if the answer is 0, you could increase that to 1. You then have the Gardener for 2 coins. The Gardener lets you, on an answer of 2 or more, not show a card to the person interrogating you. So you still have to give the answer, I have 2 cards that occurred in the garden. But then by paying the Gardener, you don't need to show the person interrogating you one of those 2 cards. The last helper card when you're being interrogated is the Geisha. For 3 coins, the Geisha will allow you, if you are forced to show the person interrogating you a card based on your answer of 2 or more, the Geisha forces the person interrogating you to show you a card in return from their hand. The card they show you needs to match at least one of the 3 qualities of the card you just passed them. So if you passed, say, this card, which is 6 o'clock, the Japanese Professor Plum, and the Onsen, they would have to show you a card in return that matches one of those 3 aspects. You continue around the table in this fashion, collecting coins from being interrogated, spending coins on the helpers to improve your interrogations, taking diligent notes on your notepad until you think you have the correct answer. At any point on any person's turn, you can say, I'm ready to guess who the murderer was and at what time and place it occurred. You can then clearly notate that on your pad and check it against the card in the box. If you're right, you win and the game is over. If you're wrong, you don't tell anybody what you saw. You return the card to the box and you are out of the game for asking additional questions. You do, however, still have to make yourself available to answer questions about your alibi cards from the other players. This game does suffer from a little bit of analysis paralysis for new-time players in that people take very diligent notes and want to make sure they're very confident in their answer before going to the box, because as anybody who's played a player elimination game, it sucks to be the first one out and have to wait till the end. All right, so that was 4 Suspects. A little different from your typical board game, but as I think I mentioned in the first episode, what really gets me to pick up a game is anything that has a mechanic that isn't already on my shelf. And 4 Suspects definitely meets that requirement. I don't have anything quite like this murder puzzle mystery that I can crack open and play with friends. Although it may not be the best game to have over a beer or 2, as it's very easy to lose track of some key pieces of information. So next week, I'm going to keep working on the translation of the rules for Okushin Party and hopefully give you a look at that. But if I'm still working on it, I've got plenty of other games to show you. Also, I should have an episode coming out soon exploring some of the board game shops in Tokyo. And in just 4 weeks' time, Tokyo Game Market, the premier board game convention in Japan, will be happening the first weekend of May. And I'm going to have a multi-video series special covering that convention and all the games I'm able to try out and pick up while there. With that, please like this video, subscribe to Games for Gaijin, share this video and the channel on Reddit, share it with your friends, and I can't wait to see you guys next week and show you another game from Japan. This is Games for Gaijin, signing off. Thanks.